Elias stood at the edge of the starport, his boots making soft clicks on the polished metal floor. He took a deep breath, trying to calm the mixture of excitement and nerves swirling inside him. For a young human from Earth, this was no ordinary day. It was the day he would step onto the largest stage in the galaxy, the Interstellar Star Summit. Delegates from dozens of planets and species had gathered here, each one powerful and advanced in its own way. And Elias, barely out of his 20s, was representing humanity. He adjusted his uniform, its simple blue fabric contrasting sharply with the elaborate attires of the alien delegates. Bustling around him, tall, shimmering beings with translucent skin floated past, their eyes glowing in soft colors. Short, stocky creatures with mechanical limbs clicked in rhythm as they walked, carrying strange instruments. Everywhere he looked, there was something he had never seen before, something unfamiliar and fascinating. And yet, he reminded himself, Earth had its own strengths. Humans might not be as big or fast or advanced as some of these species, but they were clever, determined, resourceful. A soft chime echoed through the hall, signaling the arrival of the Solari Empire's delegation. Elias's heart skipped a beat. He had heard of the Solari before. They were proud, beautiful, and incredibly intelligent. Among them was their youngest princess, Valera, who was only 19 but already a political prodigy. Rumor had it she was brilliant, sharp-tongued, and not afraid to speak her mind. The doors opened, and Valera entered. Elias could see why she was famous. She moved with elegance, her long, silver hair glinting under the hall lights. Her armor-like dress shimmered with tiny energy crystals, reflecting colors like a star. Her eyes, bright violet and piercing, scanned the room with curiosity and a touch of amusement. And then they landed on him. Elias straightened, trying not to feel too small or out of place. But the princess's gaze was not warm. It was calculating. Judging. Valera said, her voice soft but carrying across the hall. The human. I've heard your planet still struggles with primitive technology and fragile biology. I must admit, I'm curious to see what you can possibly contribute here. Elias froze for a moment. The words stung not because they were untrue, but because they were spoken with such confidence and a clear desire to insult. The room seemed to quiet around him, some delegates snickering softly, others raising their eyebrows in surprise. Most people would have responded. They would have defended themselves, explained, or even snapped back. But Elias didn't. Instead, he did something unexpected. He turned his back on the princess, held his head high, and walked away without a word. Valera's eyes widened in shock. She had expected a verbal fight, a spark of anger, or at least a weak defense. But this human simply left her standing there. For a moment, the room felt suspended, as if the delegates themselves didn't know how to react. Some frowned, some whispered, and some laughed quietly, assuming he was too intimidated to respond. But Elias didn't care. Words, especially angry words, were easy. Actions were harder. He had no interest in proving himself through arguments or insults. He wanted to show them, through intelligence and skill, what humanity could really do. He made his way through the hall, noticing the other delegates eyeing him curiously. Some were polite, nodding in respect, but others looked dismissive. He could feel the weight of their expectations or their lack of them. Humans were new here, small, fragile, and underestimated. And that was exactly the advantage he intended to use. As he reached the central chamber of the summit, Elias noticed the grand architecture. The hall was massive, stretching high into a dome that reflected the stars outside. Strange energy conduits pulsed along the walls, sending a soft hum through the room. Platforms hovered in the air, and holographic displays projected information about each delegate, their species, and their accomplishments. Elias had never seen technology like this on Earth, yet he felt no fear. He felt a spark of determination. Welcome, delegates. A calm voice announced over the hall's speakers. We are honored to host you at this year's Star Summit. Here, we will discuss trade, diplomacy, and shared security across the galaxy. Elias nodded politely, keeping a low profile. He didn't need to be in the spotlight yet. He was here to observe, to learn, and to find opportunities where humans could prove their worth. And he already had one opportunity waiting. During a tour of the summit, he passed the technology exhibition. Each species proudly displayed their inventions, from energy weapons and defense shields to biological enhancements and artificial intelligence systems. Most were overly complex, intricate, and, in some cases, fragile. Elias noticed small flaws that the alien engineers didn't see: overheated circuits, unstable power sources, and systems that required constant adjustments. Humans didn't have these perfect, fragile systems. They had simplicity and ingenuity, tools that could work under pressure, adapt quickly, and succeed where precision alone might fail. He walked past a display of a Solari energy matrix, carefully noting the weak points. Valera had positioned herself near it, clearly watching him. She raised an eyebrow, a small smirk on her face. "You study our technology like a child inspecting toys," she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Elias didn't respond. Instead, he nodded politely, keeping his hands behind his back. He understood the game. She wanted a reaction, some acknowledgement of her superiority. She wanted him to feel small, but he refused. Humans were underestimated for a reason, and sometimes the best response was patience and observation. Later, during the welcoming banquet, delegates mingled under the glow of floating lights. Elias found himself seated next to a trade diplomat from the Orion cluster, who whispered about the galaxy's skepticism toward Earth. "Most see humans as weak," the diplomat said, shaking his head. "They think your planet won't last a decade if left alone. And that princess, she enjoys insulting those she deems unworthy." Elias smiled faintly. "Maybe they just haven't seen what humans can do," he said softly. The diplomat laughed quietly. "If you can prove them wrong, you'll earn a place they can't ignore." Elias's mind replayed Valera's insult. It wasn't just a challenge, it was a spark, and he intended to turn it into fuel. The galaxy could doubt humans all it wanted. Let them watch. Let them mock. Actions would speak louder than words, and Elias was determined that the humans would be heard. As the night deepened, he wandered to a balcony overlooking the city below. Twin moons cast silvery light on Earth-style buildings, towers of glass and steel. Alien in design, but strangely familiar. In that quiet moment, Elias thought about what he represented: a small planet of humans. Underestimated, fragile, yet full of clever minds and unshakable courage. And somewhere across the hall, Princess Valera watched him, her curiosity slowly growing into something else, a recognition that perhaps this human was unlike any she had met before. Elias turned away from the balcony, ready to face whatever the summit would throw at him. He didn't need to shout or fight with words. He only needed to show the galaxy that humans had value beyond appearances. And as he walked back into the grand hall, he felt a quiet certainty settle in his chest. The Star Summit had just begun, and humanity was about to make its first real impression. The next morning, the grand hall of the Star Summit buzzed with activity. Delegates from every corner of the galaxy moved between exhibitions, demonstrations, and meetings. Elias arrived early, walking quietly through the corridors lined with glowing panels and floating platforms. He observed the delegates, noticing their interactions. Many of them acted as if Earth and humans were a curiosity at best, a joke at worst. Princess Valera was already present, standing beside her advisors, discussing the summit schedule. Her sharp eyes scanned the hall, searching for anomalies, for weakness, for advantage. When they landed on Elias, she gave a subtle nod to herself, as if confirming her earlier opinion: the human was small, fragile, and probably unimportant. Elias didn't let her stare bother him. He had learned in his short time on Earth that pride could be dangerous when it blinded someone to reality, and he was eager to show that humans could see and solve problems that even advanced species might overlook. The summit's first major demonstration involved the Central Communication Array, a massive structure designed to allow real-time translation and message transmission across light years. It was the backbone of the summit, ensuring that all species could communicate without confusion. Delegates from several races were tasked with testing it before the official opening. As the testing began, the array hummed to life. Holographic projections flickered, streams of data flowed across screens, and the air vibrated with energy. For a moment, everything seemed perfect. Then, without warning, the system glitched. Messages between delegates scrambled, voices overlapped, and some communications disappeared entirely. Panic spread quickly. Delegates waved their hands over panels, adjusted controls, and shouted commands. But nothing worked. Elias observed quietly from a corner, noticing the tension. The aliens were trying to solve the problem in ways he knew would fail. Complex sequences, intricate adjustments, over-reliance on automated systems. Their approaches were elegant but fragile. Humans, he thought, often succeeded by simplicity and adaptability. He stepped forward politely. "May I try?" he asked, his voice calm. Heads turned. A few delegates scoffed, whispering among themselves. "The human thinks he can fix this?" Someone muttered. Valera's eyes narrowed, a faint smile on her lips. She did not expect him to succeed. Elias crouched by the array, examining its circuits, conduits, and energy flows. He noticed that the system relied heavily on a central feedback loop that was now overloaded. The aliens had attempted multiple complex solutions, each one making the problem worse. Elias traced the flow with his fingers, thinking in simple patterns. "Disconnect the secondary relays and stabilize the core manually," he said, more to himself than anyone else. Then, with careful precision, he followed through. Slowly, the communication array began to stabilize. The holograms cleared, the voices became distinct, and the messages flowed smoothly. The room went silent. Delegates stared at Elias in shock. A young human, whom many had dismissed as weak and fragile, had resolved a problem that multiple advanced species could not fix. Even the technicians looked at him with amazement. Princess Valera's violet eyes widened. She had expected failure, maybe a minor disruption, but not this. The human had done what none of the Solari or other delegates could manage. Her mind raced, trying to understand how someone so seemingly ordinary could accomplish such a task. Elias straightened, keeping his expression neutral. The system was overcomplicated, he said simply. Sometimes the best solution is the simplest one. A few delegates murmured in agreement, though many still looked skeptical. Valera remained silent, studying him intently. She didn't speak, but her mind was already working. This human was different, not weak, not unimportant. Different. The success with the communication array gave Elias a quiet confidence. He didn't need applause. He only needed results. And results, he knew, spoke louder than words. Later that day, delegates gathered for a demonstration of technological innovations from various species. Each presented a device, invention, or system to showcase their intelligence and skill. The hall was filled with intricate machines, energy shields, AI constructs, and bioengineered organisms. Most were impressive, but Elias noticed flaws, overcomplicated designs, excessive reliance on specific conditions, and fragility in unexpected circumstances. When it was his turn to present, Elias approached a simple console he had brought from Earth. It was small, unassuming, and modest compared to the dazzling devices around it, but it had been engineered for adaptability. Elias explained how it could perform multiple functions, solve problems quickly, and withstand unexpected conditions. The delegates looked skeptical. A human, with a device smaller than a lunchbox, claiming superiority? Many snickered quietly. Valera tilted her head, her eyes narrowing, curious despite herself. Elias demonstrated the device's abilities. It analyzed energy patterns, rerouted power, and solved a simulated problem that had stumped several alien machines. Within minutes, the room fell silent once more. The alien delegates realized the human device, though small and simple, outperformed their complex creations under unpredictable conditions. By the end of the demonstration, whispers filled the room. Some delegates looked embarrassed at their overconfidence. Others were genuinely impressed. And Princess Valera, she felt a strange mix of emotions. Pride, curiosity, and a twinge of doubt in her previous assumptions about humanity. Interesting. She muttered under her breath, barely audible. Elias, focused on his presentation, did not hear her. During the lunch break, Elias wandered the exhibition, observing further. He noticed the subtle flaws in alien technology that no one else seemed to see. Their systems were brilliant on paper, but brittle in practice. He realized that humans had a unique edge, imagination, adaptability, and resourcefulness. Strength didn't always come from raw power or complexity. Sometimes it came from thinking differently, seeing solutions others overlooked, and using what you had creatively done in a quiet corner. A small group of young delegates approached him. They were curious, friendly, and genuinely interested in his work. "How did you do that?" one asked, pointing to the repaired communication array. Elias smiled gently. "Sometimes things are too complicated. You simplify, you test, you adapt. That's what humans do." They nodded, taking notes, asking questions, and eager to learn. For the first time, Elias felt a small wave of change within the summit. Perhaps humans could earn respect not through weapons or wealth or numbers, but through ingenuity and problem-solving. Later, as the day drew to a close, the delegates gathered for a social event in the summit's observation deck. The room overlooked the city of the host planet, lights sparkling like constellations beneath them. Valera stood by the railing, watching Elias interact with other delegates, explaining ideas, answering questions, and solving minor technical issues. She couldn't help but be impressed. This human, small and unassuming, had achieved something that no one else had expected. And he had done it without arrogance, without insults, without claiming superiority. His actions spoke louder than any words could. For Valera, this was new. She had always measured worth through intelligence, skill, and prestige. Yet, here was a human, underestimated and mocked, quietly demonstrating that humans could excel in ways even the galaxy's most advanced civilizations might overlook. Elias returned to his quarters that evening, exhausted but satisfied. He knew the real test was yet to come. The summit would present challenges, competitions, and dangers that would reveal who was truly capable. But for now, he had planted the first seed. Humans were not to be dismissed. Humans had potential that no one had truly seen yet, and somewhere across the hall, Princess Valera watched, her mind already shifting. Perhaps the human was not weak. Perhaps he was something more. The Star Summit was only beginning, and Elias was ready. He had no intention of letting humanity be underestimated ever again. The Star Summit had now entered its third day, and the atmosphere was electric. Delegates moved quickly through the grand halls, preparing for discussions, demonstrations, and competitions designed to measure intelligence, creativity, and adaptability. Among them, whispers of the human, Elias, had begun to spread. Some species were curious, others skeptical, but all eyes were slowly starting to take notice. Princess Valera had spent much of the morning observing him. The way he calmly solved problems, the way he interacted with other delegates, the quiet confidence that radiated from him, it was all unlike anything she had expected from a human. She felt a strange mixture of irritation and fascination. He was not arrogant, yet he did not appear afraid. He was small, yet he had already done what many larger, more advanced species could not. "I suppose it is time to test him properly," Valera muttered to herself, her voice barely audible. She turned to her advisors and instructed them to prepare a simulation challenge. This challenge was known across the galaxy as one of the toughest tests of intelligence and adaptability. It was a virtual environment filled with puzzles, obstacles, and unpredictable events that required quick thinking and creative solutions to succeed. Few delegates had ever completed it without assistance, and none had done so perfectly on their first attempt. By mid-afternoon, the simulation arena was ready. Elias entered quietly, his eyes scanning the sleek, metallic chamber. Holographic panels projected instructions, and the walls shifted with moving obstacles and puzzles that seemed almost alive. Delegates from other species were already waiting, eager to see how the human would perform. Valera appeared last, stepping gracefully into the chamber, her eyes fixed on Elias with a challenging intensity. "Human," she said, her voice calm but firm, "this is a test of your ability to think under pressure. To adapt to situations beyond your understanding. Succeed, and you may begin to earn the respect of the galaxy. Fail, and, well, we will know your limits. Elias nodded politely. He did not speak to argue or complain. Words were unnecessary. Actions were the proof. The simulation began. Instantly, the environment shifted around him. Puzzles appeared, glowing tiles that needed to be activated in the correct sequence, energy barriers that required precise timing, and holographic locks that responded only to creative patterns of logic. Many delegates froze, analyzing the system, debating over every move, trying to predict every possible outcome. They were overthinking. Elias, on the other hand, trusted his instincts. He moved carefully but confidently, observing patterns and testing them quickly. When a puzzle seemed unsolvable, he looked for alternative angles, using unconventional thinking. Where others relied on brute force or complex calculations, he relied on adaptability and imagination. Minutes turned into tense moments as the delegates watched. Some muttered doubts. He is only human. He cannot do this. Others, more open-minded, leaned forward. Intrigued by his methodical yet innovative approach, a holographic wall suddenly shifted, revealing a maze with moving barriers. A few delegates hesitated, trying to plan every step in advance. Elias did not pause. He observed the pattern of movement, timed his steps, and navigated the maze fluidly. When a barrier almost closed on him, he adjusted immediately, ducking and sidestepping. Never panicking, Valera's expression remained calm but sharp. She had expected hesitation or mistakes. But Elias continued, solving puzzles faster than anyone had anticipated. He did not rush recklessly. He calculated in his own way, using human ingenuity to find shortcuts where the aliens relied on brute force or complicated devices. Halfway through the simulation, an unexpected event occurred. A holographic energy surge threatened to reset the entire challenge. The system was designed to punish mistakes, and most delegates would have been forced to start over. But Elias observed the surge's rhythm and realized he could use it to his advantage. With careful timing, he redirected the energy flow, stabilizing the system while simultaneously completing one of the most difficult puzzles in the simulation. Gasps filled the chamber. Delegates who had been skeptical could not hide their astonishment. Even Valera's advisors whispered among themselves, unable to comprehend how a human could manipulate the system so efficiently. The final stage of the simulation appeared, a sequence of holographic locks that required simultaneous activation in multiple locations. Delegates struggled, trying to calculate every move perfectly. Elias noticed something no one else did. The sequence had a simple repeating pattern, hidden beneath the complexity. Using his observation skills, he activated the locks in perfect order, completing the challenge flawlessly. The simulation ended, and silence filled the chamber. Elias stood calmly, his breathing steady, waiting for the response. Some delegates looked embarrassed, others were impressed, but all were silently reconsidering their assumptions about humans. Princess Valera stepped forward, her violet eyes wide with curiosity and a hint of admiration. "I did not expect this," she said slowly, her voice unsteady for the first time. "You are capable, more capable than I imagined." Elias bowed slightly, maintaining his composure. The challenge was designed to test creativity and adaptability. That is something humans practice constantly. We solve problems not always by power or tools, but by thinking differently. Valera studied him. There was no arrogance in his voice, no need to prove superiority. Yet the result was undeniable. He had completed a challenge that the most advanced species had struggled to master. For the first time, the princess felt a twinge of respect for the human. The other delegates approached, some curious, some eager to learn. Elias calmly explained his approach, showing that observation, patience, and unconventional thinking often led to solutions that pure power or technology could not. Valera remained silent for a while, watching him. She realized that she had underestimated humans because she had measured worth only by traditional standards, strength, intelligence, and status. Elias had shown her that value could also come from creativity, determination, and resilience qualities humans possessed in abundance. Later, during a break in the summit, Valera approached him privately. "Human," she said, her tone less sharp than before. "How is it that you can accomplish what others cannot? Your species surprises me. Every time I think I understand, you prove me wrong." Elias smiled politely. "We have to adapt to survive. We are not the strongest or the fastest, but we are persistent. We think, we try, and we never give up. That is how humans succeed." Valera nodded slowly, a rare humility in her expression. "Perhaps I have been too proud. Perhaps I judged too quickly." Elias shook his head slightly. "You only see what you want to see at first. Everyone does. Actions, not words, reveal true capability." The moment lingered, a quiet recognition forming between them. Valera did not need to insult him anymore. She understood that the human had earned a place at the summit not through force or words, but through skill and intelligence. As the day ended, Elias returned to his quarters, tired but satisfied. He had faced one of the toughest challenges in the galaxy and had succeeded. More importantly, he had begun to shift perceptions about humanity. The delegates were starting to see that humans were not weak, that they could contribute in ways no one had expected. Princess Valera stood on a balcony across the hall, watching the stars above. She thought about the human who had outsmarted simulations, designed to confound the galaxy's most brilliant minds. She realized that respect had to be earned, and that Elias had earned it without raising his voice, without boasting, without making threats. For her, the lesson was clear: underestimate humans at your own risk. They had a quiet strength, a cleverness, and a resourcefulness that could not be measured by traditional standards. And in Elias, she had seen the perfect example. The Star Summit continued, but the tone had shifted. Delegates now watched humans differently, and Valera, once quick to insult, now regarded them with cautious curiosity. The stage was set for further challenges, greater tests, and even more opportunities for humans to show their worth. And Elias, calm, observant, and determined, was ready for whatever came next. He had proven that humans were more than their size or appearance, and the galaxy was beginning to take notice. The human might be young, unassuming, and underestimated, but he was far from ordinary. The Star Summit had reached its fourth day, and the energy in the Grand Hall was tense. Delegates moved cautiously, discussing trade, security, and technology. But beneath the formal interactions was an undercurrent of unease. Strange signals had been detected from the edge of the galaxy, and while some dismissed them as a minor anomaly, others whispered of a forgotten warship, a relic of a civilization thought extinct. Elias arrived early, observing the discussions with calm attention. Even though humans were new to galactic diplomacy, he had begun to earn a reputation as someone who could remain composed under pressure. That skill, he realized, might be more important than ever. As he walked through the summit, he noticed Valera speaking urgently with her advisors. Her violet eyes were sharper than usual, reflecting concern. "The reports are confirmed," she said quietly. "A massive warship, built centuries ago, is heading toward us. Its technology, it is unlike anything we have faced before." Elias's brow furrowed. He had read reports of ancient war machines, but never encountered one himself. Still, he reminded himself that intelligence and observation often mattered more than size or power. If he could analyze the ship, understand its weaknesses, and act quickly, he could make a difference. The warship's arrival was announced shortly after. Outside the summit, through the massive observation windows, a colossal vessel drifted silently through space. Its dark metal hull was covered with strange glowing runes, and enormous energy turrets jutted from its sides. Even the most advanced species in the summit's hall gasped. Many began issuing hurried commands, activating defensive systems, and preparing for combat. Valera turned to Elias. "Human," she said, her voice steady but urgent, "we need a plan. The Council is panicking, and traditional tactics may not work. Can you help?" Elias nodded. "Let me analyze the ship first." He was escorted to a tactical interface, a large console that allowed him to scan and interact with the ship remotely. As he studied the readings, he noticed patterns others overlooked: the energy flow of the ship, the placement of its turrets, and the way its shields fluctuated in response to external energy sources. It was a machine built for destruction, but it was predictable in its logic. Your defenses relied too heavily on force fields and automated targeting, he said to Valera quietly. If we can disrupt the central energy conduit, we can disable the ship without firing a single shot. The key is precision, timing, and unconventional thinking. Her eyes widened. You mean we could stop it without destroying it? Elias nodded. Exactly. Destruction would cause massive collateral damage. We need a subtle approach. Let me coordinate with the engineers and delegates who trust my methods. Delegates from several species, hesitant at first, began to assist him. Elias remained calm, issuing clear instructions and guiding them through a plan that relied on strategy and ingenuity, not brute force. He instructed engineers to create a small, concentrated energy pulse that could penetrate the ship's defenses at a precise moment. At the same time, other delegates would manipulate the warship's targeting systems to misalign its turrets. Temporarily, Valera watched closely, her respect for Elias growing with every instruction. She had underestimated humans before, but now she saw that intelligence, observation, and creativity could sometimes triumph over sheer power. As the warship approached, alarms blared throughout the summit. The massive vessel activated its shields, and energy pulses shot from its turrets, testing the summit's defensive systems. Many species panicked, firing weapons and attempting risky maneuvers. Elias remained calm, his mind calculating the perfect timing for the energy pulse. When the moment arrived, the pulse was released. It traveled with incredible precision, slipping through the warship's defenses. Simultaneously, the delegates manipulated the targeting systems, creating an opening. The massive vessel shuddered as its shields flickered and weakened. For a tense few moments, nothing happened. Then, the energy flow of the ship's main conduit destabilized. Its massive engines shuddered, turrets went offline, and the warship drifted silently, powerless. Before finally shutting down completely, the hall erupted in stunned silence, followed by cautious applause. Delegates stared at Elias, realizing that a human, a species so underestimated, had just neutralized a galactic threat that had terrified the galaxy. Valera stepped forward, her violet eyes shining with admiration. I didn't think it was possible, she admitted. You didn't just solve a problem, you saved countless lives, perhaps even the summit itself. Elias shook his head slightly. I didn't do it alone. I observed, adapted, and worked with others. Humans are resourceful, yes, but collaboration is just as important. We succeed when we think together, not just individually. The delegates murmured in agreement. Some nodded in respect. Others quietly acknowledged that humanity had earned a place among the galaxy's most capable civilizations. Valera, however, could not hide her surprise. She had gone from insulting Elias to watching him command respect through intelligence and action. For her, it was a lesson she would not forget. True strength did not always come from size, technology, or pride. It could come from courage, creativity, and clear thinking under pressure. Later, as the summit resumed its normal schedule, Elias was called upon to explain the human strategy in detail. Delegates listened intently, many taking notes and asking questions. His explanation was simple, logical, and easy to understand. No one could deny that humans had a unique approach, a combination of observation, adaptability, and ingenuity that could overcome obstacles even the most advanced species struggled with. During a quiet moment after the crisis, Valera approached Elias once more. You act differently than anyone I have met, she said. You do not boast, yet your actions speak louder than words. You have earned respect in a way I have rarely seen. Elias smiled softly. Thank you. Humans are often underestimated. We are not the strongest or the most advanced, but we have something that matters: determination, creativity, and a willingness to find solutions where others see only problems. Valera nodded slowly. She realized that she had been wrong to judge him, wrong to underestimate humans entirely. And yet, she could not help but feel a newfound admiration not just for Elias, but for the potential of an entire species that others dismissed so easily. The warship, now powerless, was carefully escorted away by combined alien forces. No lives were lost, no cities destroyed, and the summit continued without further incident. The delegates, once skeptical of humanity, now regarded Earth with cautious respect. Humans had proven that they could act decisively, think creatively, and save lives in ways others could not. That evening, the summit's observation deck was quieter than usual. Delegates reflected on the day's events, many still in disbelief at what a single human had accomplished. Valera stood near the railing, looking at the stars above, thinking about the human who had defied expectations at every turn. She realized that Elias was not just exceptional, he was an example of what humans could achieve when given the chance. And she began to wonder, if one human could accomplish so much, what could an entire species do when their abilities were fully recognized? Elias returned to his quarters, tired but satisfied. He had faced one of the most dangerous challenges in the galaxy, and had succeeded not through strength, not through intimidation, but through careful thought, observation, and action. Humanity's reputation had changed in a single day, and he had played a pivotal role. As he looked out the window at the stars, he felt a quiet certainty. The galaxy had begun to see the truth. Humans were clever, adaptable, and resilient. They were underestimated at their own risk, and he was only just beginning to prove it. Valera, watching from her balcony across the hall, allowed herself a small smile. The human had surprised her, challenged her assumptions, and earned her respect. She understood now that words alone could not measure worth. Actions, intelligence, and courage revealed true strength. The Star Summit would continue, and challenges would come again. But one thing was certain: humans were no longer the species to be ignored. And Elias, calm, observant, and determined, had made sure of it. The galaxy had witnessed something remarkable that day: the quiet brilliance of a human mind, and the subtle, unstoppable power of determination. And for Valera, it was only the beginning of a deeper understanding, both of the humans standing before her and of the potential of an entire species she had once dismissed. The Star Summit had reached its final day, and a sense of anticipation hung over the Grand Hall. Delegates from across the galaxy moved through the corridors with renewed respect for humanity. Whispers of Elias's achievements during the communication array repair, the simulation challenge, and the neutralization of the ancient warship had spread quickly. Humans were no longer underestimated, they were recognized as capable, clever, and resilient. Elias walked through the hall with quiet confidence, observing the delegates. He noticed subtle changes in their behavior. Heads nodded in acknowledgement, eyes lingered with curiosity, and conversations often turned to his methods. The human presence was no longer a novelty, it was a reminder that intelligence and resourcefulness could come from unexpected places. Princess Valera followed from a distance, observing Elias with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. For the past few days, she had watched him face challenges, solve problems, and earn respect without a single boast or insult. Her earlier assumptions about humanity had been completely overturned. She was no longer interested in proving superiority, she wanted to understand, to learn, and perhaps to work alongside someone who had already demonstrated exceptional skill. The summit's final event was a ceremonial assembly to recognize the contributions of delegates who had demonstrated excellence and innovation. Leaders of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations gathered on the central stage, with the Grand Hall filled with spectators. The host, a wise and ancient diplomat from the Endorian system, addressed the assembly. Delegates, today we conclude the Star Summit. We have witnessed incredible displays of skill, intelligence, and courage. But one individual, representing a species once underestimated, has shown that determination, creativity, and collaboration can achieve what many believed impossible. Murmurs of agreement spread through the hall. All eyes turned to Elias, who stood quietly, observing the proceedings. He had never sought recognition, yet the acknowledgement felt meaningful, not for personal glory, but because it represented the rising reputation of humanity. The diplomat continued. We honor Elias of Earth for his ingenuity, courage, and leadership during the challenges of this summit. Humanity has earned a place among the galaxy's capable civilizations, not through might, but through cleverness, adaptability, and perseverance. Applause erupted. Delegates stood, some clapping enthusiastically, others nodding respectfully. Elias bowed slightly, accepting the recognition with humility. Across the hall, Valera's violet eyes glimmered with respect. She stepped forward, moving toward him as the applause continued. When the hall quieted, she spoke. Elias, she said, her voice calm but sincere, I have watched you from the beginning. I have seen your patience, your intelligence, and your courage. You have proven that humans are not to be underestimated. You have earned not only my respect, but the respect of everyone here. Elias smiled politely. Thank you, Princess Valera, but I was not acting alone. Humans may be small in number, but we achieve great things when we work together and when we approach problems with determination and creativity. She nodded, her expression thoughtful. Perhaps that is what I failed to see before. Strength is not always obvious. Sometimes it is quiet, persistent, and unexpected. The two stood together for a moment, not as rivals, but as equals who had learned to recognize the value in each other. Valera had begun to understand humanity's potential, and Elias had seen the beginnings of a bridge between Earth and the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. Following the ceremony, the summit transitioned to a closing banquet, a celebration of achievements and new alliances. Delegates from various species approached Elias, seeking to discuss ideas, collaborate on projects, and learn more about human methods. He spoke patiently, demonstrating solutions, sharing insights, and encouraging innovation. Humans were no longer seen as fragile, they were now valued as partners, problem solvers, and contributors to galactic progress. Valera joined him at the banquet table. You have changed the way we see your species, she said quietly. It is remarkable how one individual can shift the perception of an entire planet. Elias shrugged modestly. It is not just one individual. Humans are clever, determined, and adaptable. I only acted as one example. Others will follow, and perhaps they will show even greater potential than I have. She smiled faintly, a mixture of admiration and amusement. I will be interested to see what comes next. As the night progressed, discussions and celebrations filled the hall. Aliens of all shapes and sizes engaged with humans in ways that had once seemed impossible. Trade proposals, technological collaborations, and scientific partnerships were proposed. The Star Summit, once a place where Earth had been underestimated, had transformed into a platform for mutual respect and cooperation. Later, as the banquet ended, Elias and Valera stepped onto the observation deck, overlooking the city below. Twin moons cast a gentle glow, reflecting on the metallic towers and energy streams that flowed like rivers of light. The moment was quiet, peaceful, and full of promise. You have done more than survive this summit, Valera said softly. You have changed the way the galaxy sees humans. That is no small feat. Elias looked out at the horizon. Humans have always been underestimated, but we have creativity, resilience, and determination. When given a chance, we can achieve remarkable things. This summit is only the beginning. Valera nodded, her expression thoughtful. Perhaps one day, Earth will be recognized not as a fledgling planet, but as a force to be respected. You have shown that, Elias. He smiled gently. We still have a long way to go, but every step counts. The two stood in silence for a moment, watching the stars. In that quiet, there was a sense of possibility not just for Elias or Valera, but for humanity and the galaxy as a whole. They had seen the power of intelligence, courage, and collaboration. They had witnessed the impact one determined individual could make. When they returned to the summit hall, delegates were exchanging ideas, forming alliances, and discussing plans for the future. Earth had gained a foothold, and humans were now seen as innovators, collaborators, and problem solvers. The galaxy had learned that intelligence and courage were not defined by size or status, but by the willingness to act, to think differently. And to persevere, Princess Valera approached Elias one final time before the summit concluded. "I hope this is not the last time we work together," she said, a small smile playing on her lips. Elias nodded. "I hope not. There's much to learn from each other, and much we can achieve together." As the summit came to a close, delegates departed for their home planets, carrying stories of the human who had quietly but decisively proven his species' worth. The galaxy would no longer underestimate Earth. Humans had shown that ingenuity, determination, and courage could stand alongside even the most advanced civilizations. Elias watched the last of the starships depart, feeling a quiet satisfaction. He had not sought fame, recognition, or power. He had only acted with intelligence, creativity, and perseverance. And yet, his actions had changed perceptions, earned respect, and opened doors for humanity across the stars. Valera stood beside him, looking at the horizon. "You have given your species a gift," she said softly. "Not just recognition, but possibility." Elias smiled. "The gift is not mine alone. It belongs to all humans and to anyone willing to act with courage, intelligence, and determination." This summit is only the first step. The two stood together in silence, watching the moon shine over the city, feeling the weight of the moment. It was the end of one journey and the beginning of another. Humanity had entered the galaxy not as a weak or fragile species, but as one capable of greatness, ingenuity, and cooperation. And in that quiet, starlit moment, Elias realized something profound. The galaxy was full of possibilities, and humans, once underestimated, were ready to embrace them. The Star Summit had concluded, but the story of Earth's rise had only just begun. One determined human had proven that actions, intelligence, and perseverance could change the course of perception, and the galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. As the final stars twinkled in the night sky, Elias and Valera turned back toward the summit hall, ready to face the future. The galaxy was vast, full of challenges, and filled with opportunity, and humanity, now respected and recognized, would play its part. The age of underestimation was over. The era of human potential had begun.